We're talking about strong security guarantees. This declaration sets out each of the components of this security guarantee. We have a report from our heads of general staff and also from the side of the Euro-American coordination. And here we have taken due note of the fact that there is a coordination body that will fully coordinate all the competent armed forces and provide coordination between the Coalition of the Willing, United States of America and Ukraine in operational terms that will support the General Staff of the Coalition here in Paris. So within this coalition, on the basis of all the work done in recent months, we have consolidated our approaches. Firstly, with the setting up ceasefire monitoring mechanisms to be placed under American leadership, with contributions from several states that said they were willing and able to do so. Then long-term support, firstly to Ukrainian armed forces that are and will remain in the front line of defense and deterrence against aggression. So we will have on a volunteer basis 800,000 men with training capabilities and all the necessary resources to ensure that this army can deter any new aggression. Then we'll continue to lay the ground for the creation of a multinational force in the air, on the seas and on land to provide reassurance after the ceasefire and a long way behind the contact line that was agreed between all the general staff from France to Germany and Poland. I would also like to salute the work done and offered by Turkey in maritime theatre. They are willing to take on responsibilities. And fourthly, we have decided to translate into legal terms these commitments to support Ukraine in the event of a new attack by Russia through solidarity and intervention mechanisms. And also, we are continuing to converge around the questions of economic support and corruption. That's the second thing we talked about. But at the same time, we have consolidated the architecture, the planning, the means and the rules for the security guarantee for Ukraine the day after peace is signed, both for Ukraine and the continent of Europe. Part of our discussion was then focusing on Ukraine's future prosperity with the American plan that was presented and the European contributions with a desire to speed up our work alongside Ukraine so that in the next few weeks this prosperity plan can be finalized. Will be a major component of the peace agreements. All of this constitute essential pillars of what will support the negotiations that are underway, and we want therefore that to be completed as soon as possible. But these security guarantees are the key to ensuring that never a peace agreement can mean Ukrainian surrender, and never a peace agreement can mean a new threat for Ukraine. And I think what's very important to underscore is that all the countries represented here, but also all the countries in the Coalition of the Willing, and those who attended this meeting following the excellent coordination that we had last year in Berlin. All those actors share the same desire for peace in Ukraine and Europe, but we insisted that this be a fair, lasting and strong peace. And we're all clear in our minds that the peace agreements signed by Russia in the last 15 years have all been broken in Moldova, Georgia and Ukraine. Therefore, based on that experience, we want to have peace and guarantees of peace on the basis of Europe's experience of the last 15 years. This is why the Paris Declaration includes these guarantees and notes the convergence between Coalition of the Willing, Ukraine and the United States of America. In addition to all this, in the short term, we will continue to provide our support to Ukraine to cope with all the challenges it is facing at the moment in terms of protecting its airspace, protecting civilians who are continually targeted, even as we speak, by the Russians. And we will also continue our work on sanctions to limit and reduce Russia's war effort. So that is what I have to report, thanking my colleagues in Europe and the United States for the progress that has been possible thanks to today's meeting. I'll now hand over to President Zelenskyy.
This interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN and their New Year deal. New Year, new VPN, and a huge saving of up to 80% if you act now. You're busy planning how to get in shape, but the hackers are planning how to get into your accounts. ExpressVPN locks down your connection so you can start the year protecting your data. This offer ends on the 7th of January, so scan the QR code or click the link in the description now.
Well, there you go. That was President Macron. They're bringing us up to speed with what has just been agreed on this situation between the coalition of the willing. Let's return now to President Zelenskyy.
As well as the American representatives and all the journalists present. First of all, I would like to thank you for this meeting, which is the most representative. 27 leaders of the European Union, NATO, Australia, New Zealand, Turkey. As a matter of fact, it is a very broad representation, and we are able to sign a document. This is very concrete. There is a declaration, a joint declaration, and there's also this declaration of intent signed by all three countries. And this illustrates the willingness of the coalition and the European countries to work for peace. And we want to be ready so that when diplomacy reaches peace, we can place the forces of the coalition of the willing. The details will be set out in other documents. We're working on which countries are willing to contribute and guarantee security in the air, at sea and on land. We are assessing which forces are necessary, who will be able to who shall coordinate all of that. And we also want to work on monitoring and clearly say how this force or that force will be financed, as well as the Ukrainian army. I believe that our Ukrainian forces will be based on the Ukrainian army with other elements. The military from France, the United Kingdom, and others have worked on the necessary military equipment. We also have, we already have enough details, and we know which countries will get involved and what each of them will contribute separately. And allow me to thank every leader who is willing to contribute to this peaceful solution. We also addressed, we had very concrete discussions with the American delegation regarding the monitoring of peace. It's very important for us. What is crucial in this peace deal is anything that can prevent a new Russian aggression. We also made progress with the American representatives who worked on documents in Paris, and we will have other meetings with Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner. We are working on some bilateral agreements, bilateral documents, as well as trilateral documents, and are hoping to sign these soon in different formats. And God willing, we will succeed. We are very grateful for the support of the United States of America, and so that they can provide the necessary support so that Russia cannot aggress Ukraine once again. And we very much agree upon the fact that the guarantees must be based on some legal grounds to be confirmed by the American Congress. Of course, some issues remain open regarding these documents, including the 20-point document. And what we really need to work upon is the issue of territory. We have a number of ideas that could be helpful, and if some issues are not remain blocked between our teams, and the leaders can also get involved. There will be other discussions, and I would like to thank you, Emmanuel, for giving this opportunity, allowing our teams to be able to continue working here for 2 days, and I'd like to thank the American representatives for contributing to it. When it comes to security, the architecture already exists, and our partners can pressure Russia to put an end to this war. Ukraine never stood and never prevented peace. Russia started this aggression, and it is very clear as to who should do what is necessary to be done to put an end to this war. So I would like to thank all of those who contribute to peace. We all understand that we need to stop the aggressor to allow peace. The deep strikes, the sanctions, our diplomacy, all of this is working. Today we also talked about our air defense. It is essential. Some leaders of the coalition of the willing mentioned it. For us, it is a daily issue. It is true that Ukraine needs missiles every day because, notwithstanding diplomacy, the Russian strikes continue. Russia is not concentrating on diplomacy. They are striking our villages or cities or infrastructure. And we discussed this issue with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and I would like to thank him deeply for his understanding and his support. In Paris, the extension of air defense has been discussed already again. The stronger our air defense, the stronger will be our diplomacy. So thank you to all of you for your support. Thank you.
and to work with the US to guarantee Ukraine's security for the long term. This work is now more advanced than ever. Today's joint declaration set that out in clear terms. On top of that, and alongside President Zelenskyy and President Macron, we went even further today. We signed a declaration of intent on the deployment of forces to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. This is a vital part of our iron-cast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term. It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future. We discussed these issues in detail today, and so I can say that following a ceasefire, the UK and France will establish military hubs across Ukraine and build protected facilities for weapons and military equipment to support Ukraine's defensive needs. And with our coalition partners, we've also agreed significant further steps. First, that we will participate in US-led monitoring and verification of any ceasefire. Second, we will support the long-time provision of armaments for Ukraine's defence. And third, we will work towards binding commitments to support Ukraine in the case of a future armed attack by Russia. This is all about building the practical foundations on which peace would rest. But we can only get to a peace deal if Putin is ready to make compromises. And so we have to be frank. For all Russia's words, Putin is not showing that he's ready for peace. Over the last few weeks, we've seen the opposite. Further horrific strikes on Ukraine, killing and wounding civilians, and cutting off power for millions of people in the dead of winter. His forces hit a hospital in Kyiv just yesterday. And he's tried to distract from peace efforts with unfounded claims of attacks on his residence. Now, this only hardens our resolve. We will continue to step out our support for Ukraine's defence in 2026 to ensure it gets the equipment and backing it needs to continue the fight. And we will keep the pressure up on Russia, including further measures on oil traders and shadow fleet operators funding Putin's war chest. We will continue these efforts until they come to the table in good faith and until we realise the goal that we all share of a just and lasting peace. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier. Thank you. Okay. Monsieur le Chancelier, dear Friedrich.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, lieber Emmanuel, meine Damen und Herren. Das neue Jahr beginnt, wie das alte geendet hat, mit intensiver Friedensdiplomatie für die Ukraine. Und auf dem Weg hin zum Frieden.
There you go. You've just been hearing from President Macron, President Zelenskyy, and of course Prime Minister Keir Starmer. This is live in Paris. Of course, each of these chaps speaking their native language. So we're just going to get that translation for you. This, of course, is the German Chancellor speaking right now. I shall get that translation feed for you and take you straight back to that as soon as we can. Don't you worry, you will not be missing out. But of course, if you're just tuning in, you're wondering what's going on. This is a huge day, but I'll take you live now to Paris again.
I'd like to start by thanking Emmanuel Macron for his hospitality here in Paris. I'd also like to thank both Emmanuel and Keir for preparing this meeting today, along with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, because, ladies and gentlemen, today in the triangle of Europeans, Ukraine and United States, we have built on the progress that we achieved last year in Berlin. This is a shared success, and I'd also like to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the representatives of the United States, and thank them and President Trump for their support in all this effort. We have the same strategic goal. First and foremost, we want to make sure that the weapons in Ukraine, after 4 years of war, be finally silenced. The country is on the verge of a humanitarian energy crisis, and therefore we are stepping up, in any case, our enormous efforts so as to reach a swift conclusion. Secondly, we want there to be a ceasefire, and unlike the Minsk agreement of 2015, one based on strong security guarantees. And thirdly, as Europeans and Ukrainians, we want to ensure that we can shape this ceasefire together. Today we focused on the contribution that Europe and its partners after a ceasefire could make for Ukraine. As Coalition of the Willing, we will be shouldering our responsibilities. We want to help to make sure that in the future there are strong armed forces in Ukraine that constitute a credible deterrent for Russia through arming, training and funding. We will also take part in the monitoring of a ceasefire, and we will also make a contribution to strengthening Ukraine on land, in the sea and in the air.